Should I be careful to like not move like from this space or? All right, cool.
I did hear some bird noises.
Heard that crow. Yeah, we're gonna take that again.
Louder.
Mark it. Oh, so crisp. For the rule of law to have any kind of moral support, you need to have justice behind it. You need people to believe in the system.
If we can help legal professionals find the truth, then we're helping them achieve just outcomes.
It's not just about the mission, but it is how we are doing it. We challenge each other respectfully. We don't just want to get to the quick answer. We dig deep.
We're making something that is absolutely useful and helpful for people in their day-to-day lives.
My first big project at Everlaw was revamping our permission system.
I worked on AutoCode.
I've worked on features for Story Builder.
Yeah, I actually wrote a program that's a load file editor. If I can take like a couple hours to automate something and save someone else like 10 hours of manual work, I think that's great. Like, I absolutely want to do that.
The nature of communication and the nature of the work is constantly changing. Everlaw's contribution there is to stay ahead of that curve to ensure that our clients and our users can access that discoverable data wherever it might be, whatever form it might be, and at whatever volume it might be.
Every project on Everlaw represents a real-life issue and a real-life person.
I didn't anticipate the degree of impact that our product would have in society.
I'm writing code that could potentially affect important national cases, and that's something really special.
Looking forward, of course, we're ambitious in terms of what we're building.
Our team is currently working on some of the most innovative features.
We always want to recognize the great things that we've done, but there's a lot left for us to do, and it also still feels like a midpoint.
It's not just technology for the sake of technology or even for the sake of efficiency. It's really technology for uncovering the truth.
Please welcome back to the stage Everlaw Founder and CEO, AJ Shankar.
Summit. It's a privilege to have this time with you today. I'm here to talk about a stranger path to the truth. Now, everyone has a story about how they got to the industry. For me, over a decade ago, my story involved the product challenges that I saw. But in the time I've spent since, I've grown so much more appreciative of what's special about this industry. So I want to start with that. It starts with the rule of law, right? The idea that no one's above the law, that there's a system for pursuing justice rather than decisions of convenience made for a particular outcome. And this system is actually, it's hard to do. It's hard to do this stuff. It can be frustrating, it can be messy, it can even be unfair at times as it iterates and as it improves over time. But the aggregate result is incredible, right? It allows us to resolve disputes peaceably and fairly. It allows us to make decisions in a courtroom rather than with pitchforks. It allows us to make those decisions based on facts rather than public opinion. And it gives us, as citizens and our lawmakers, confidence that laws are followed. It allows entities to have trust between one another because they know the underlying agreements they've made are enforceable. And with due process, it protects against abuses of power and preserves the rights of individuals. Perhaps most remarkably, it allows all of us to get together in a room like this, right? Whatever side of the table we might be on, we're doing it all in support of the rule of law, and that's kind of amazing that we can get together in this way. It's essential machinery for democracy. Now, in this endeavor of supporting the rule of law, I will say that we at Everlaw are facilitators of the process, but you all are the practitioners of it. Right, so first I just want to say thank you from all of us as Everlawyers, but also as citizens, for the work you all do every day. Now, as far as facilitation goes, I will say that we take our job seriously, right? And here's how I think we fit into this whole scheme in support of rule of law, right? So for the rule of law to have moral authority, it needs to yield just outcomes. And justice is dependent on truth. You can't imagine having a just outcome if you don't know the facts of a matter. And that's where we come in, right? We are a truth-finding machine. That's what Everlaw does. We help you find the truth. Now, in doing this, I'll just note, first of all, that you all work, in essence, behind the scenes in support of the rule of law, right? The everyday person doesn't really understand all this stuff that happens, and yet you all do it, and this is how the system works. And we, as a result, actually work behind the scenes in support of you. Even in this system, we're behind the scenes. And actually, we're very happy with that, right? We're much more interested in building something of substantive value than tweeting about it. And I will say for the record, if you check my Twitter history, I only ever tweet when our marketing team makes me tweet. Sorry, marketing. That's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in the system and how even we behind the scenes can support you. But no matter what, the point here is that we only are ever going to have an impact because of the work you do, right? That impact stems from you. So I want to say thanks again. Now, I do want to talk about, again, I mentioned what drew me to the industry, right? And for me, I said it was the product challenges. And my story is like many circuitous and certainly very, very lucky. So first of all, it turns out I don't have a legal background. I didn't go to law school. I actually have a technical background. My undergrad degree is in applied math, and I have a PhD in computer science. And so my experience in the industry was actually just almost happenstance. When I was in graduate school at UC Berkeley, a law firm came to the CS department looking for a technical expert. I happened to know the stuff they needed, so I said, sure, I'll consult with you for a bit. Sounds like fun. It actually was fun. I got to sit in on depositions and write on little sticky notes and stuff like that. But what it really was eye-opening for me, right? And so what I discovered was, first, in this industry, which I never really thought about before other than reading headlines about the Supreme Court, was that the industry is full of really smart people. The stakes are really high in an exciting way. It's meaningful. The technical problems were incredibly deep. I really didn't anticipate how sophisticated the challenges were from a technical perspective that you have to deal with in the industry. And at the same time, I will say that the technology everyone was using back then was pretty bad. And so this combination of a very high technical ceiling and a low bar in terms of the technology that was available was appealing to me, right? So just knowing what I knew about computer science, I knew you could build something better, right? And that's what drew me into the industry. Now, what's interesting is in the intervening 15 years, since I had that experience to now, there's actually more challenges today than there were back then. There's a remarkable confluence today of data and work challenges happening. And I will say, well, actually, let me ask you this. How many folks here are Everlaw users? Raise your hand. Okay, lots of folks, as expected, right? So first, I will say that I'm going to talk about these challenges. Many of them are solved today with Everlaw. So it's okay, as I go through them, if you're an Everlaw user, to feel a little bit smug if you don't actually experience this challenge yourself. But I do think it's worthwhile to go over them, right, for two reasons. Number one, it's useful to understand the broader set of challenges the industry faces. And two, it gives you valuable context around why it is we built what we built, right? So I want to dig in for that reason. So the first challenge that we're dealing with is very unsurprising. It's data, right? Mountains and mountains of data. There's so much more discoverable data than there was not too long ago. 20, 30 years ago, the discoverable data was the files in your filing cabinets, and you know what? You could only have so many filing cabinets, right? Now, it's so easy to create digital data, right? It's every email you ever send, and every Slack chat you write, and every Zoom meeting you record. Mountains and mountains of data. And it's not even simple data. You might notice in my description of the data, right, it's not just emails and Office documents, it's all kinds of stuff, right? It is also Zoom meetings and CAD files and medical imaging files and text messages and iChat and GChat and Discord and Slack and Teams and Bloomberg, and it's PSTs and AO1s and EO1s and Cellebrite and hundreds more, right? The variety is staggering. It's also not just on desktops and file servers like it used to be, right? It's all over the place, and a lot of it's in the cloud, right? It's in the cloud on Microsoft 365 and SharePoint and OneDrive. It's on Google Workspace and Box and Dropbox and ShareFile, and it's on servers at Slack and Zendesk and Salesforce and Zoom and 100 more cloud providers, right? So you all as practitioners don't get to pick and choose what kinds of file types you want to deal with or where you're going to get the data. All of it's discoverable, all of it's your responsibility, and that's a real challenge. Now, on top of the challenge of collecting and storing the data, you actually have to do something with the data. You have this huge haystack, and you have to find needles, right? And if you look at the data looking back 20 years, we have 1,000 times more data now than we did then. Haystacks are 1,000 times bigger, And meanwhile, of course, your budgets and your legal teams are not 1,000 times bigger, right? So you need a better way to sift through your haystacks, and you need better algorithms, better artificial intelligence, better visualizations, better discovery, period. That's a separate, real challenge. Getting the data, building the haystack is one challenge. Getting down to the needles is another. And then, of course, there's the fragmented software experience. What do you actually have to do today to juggle these tasks? You're dealing with half a dozen tools at a time. You're going to maybe log into your discovery platform and export a document, store it in your document management system, then grab a copy, attach it to an email and send it out, get a link, put it in Word or Excel for your master cron or case map or what have you. It's insecure, it's error-prone, it's time-consuming, it's frustrating, lots of information gets lost in juggling all these applications. Also, a lot of these applications are on-premises, and so you're dealing with slower updates and poor scalability and poor interconnectedness. It doesn't have to be this way. If you look at other industries, they don't all suffer from this fragmentation problem. If you look at sales, entire sales teams and organizations can run on Salesforce. Or if you look at finance, you can run on NetSuite. If you look at HR, you can run on a tool like Workday, right? It's possible to do this in an integrated way. Now, there's an additional challenge, which is actually unique in some ways to the legal industry, right? It's how people work together. There's so many roles in the industry, and all you have to work together. So if you just look at a single law office, let's say you've got to have partners working with associates and paralegals and IT and lit support, and the New York office to coordinate with the DC office for a big matter. All of you are trying to coordinate with the in-house team and that entire ecosystem of your client, and that team may be working with outside experts. There's government attorneys, all kinds of folks involved. You're also dealing with different work styles, with hybrid work. You might be at home, you might be at work, you gotta work together. The really unique part about this is the fact that these entities are different, right? In most collaborative environments, you all work at the same place. Okay, if you're in a sales team in Salesforce, you're all, have your accounts at the same institution, you log in together, you work together. There aren't the challenges we have here, where you have a shared goal. In-house team wants a great result, they're gonna work with outside counsel, they want that great result too. But they actually have to deal with the fact they're in different organizations with different credentials, maybe different abilities to see information. You have to think about security, you have to think about permissioning. It's incredibly complex and sophisticated. And again, outside experts, bringing those folks in when you need to just to see the documents you want them to see. It's, frankly to me, really impressive you all get any work done at all. But it's really, really complex and challenging. Just the work style, what you deal with every single day. You put all these things together, there's clearly tension. The world is changing, it's changing technologically, it's changing in other ways, like with the pandemic. You all have to meet your deadlines, you have objectives you want to achieve, you have outcomes you want to get, and you're dealing with these big challenges, right? The challenge of data, the challenge of discovery, the challenge of collaboration. Each of these is a tactical roadblock to your day, right? What if, conceivably, these tactical roadblocks could turn into a strategic opportunity, right? What does a better future look like? What if things were better? Right? What if you had a way to work that was integrated, right, and collaborative, and scalable, and secure, and insightful, and actually push your business forward, right? Well, we obviously think this is possible. We think it's possible with Everlaw. No surprise there. Yesterday, you all heard from folks at Benish who talked about, their experience recently entering the AmLaw 200. 100% of their cases require discovery, but their e-discovery team is small and nimble, and they use Everlaw, right, to do all this stuff. How do they do it, right? So I want to talk about how we're solving these problems and also where we're going. So I want to talk about 3 pillars of innovation that have defined our product strategy. And in doing so, there's lots of great features on Everlaw today, right, that support these pillars. But because there's so many Everlaw users today, here, I want to talk about some new features that we're developing. In active development now, not out yet. Show you what's coming to additionally support these pillars, right? And so if you were feeling a little bit smug about some of that stuff, it's time to stop feeling smug. It's time to start feeling a little excited about what we're developing here. All right, so the first challenge is the data challenge, right? Too much data, too varied, all over the place. We've had a huge investment at Everlaw in building infrastructure for getting your data in the system. We have our own proprietary ingestion tool, for instance. We allow you to do a lot more with your data than you can do pretty much anywhere else, right? That tool that we've developed allows you to ingest data at cloud scale. We spin up hundreds of processors to deal with your data, almost 1 million documents an hour. We talked to a client that was trying to spend weeks getting their data into their old system. They did it in a single day with Everlaw, right? And because we built the system, we also are able to build in support for more file types that are out there that you're seeing coming in, and get more out of the file types you already have. We've done this in ways, for instance, if you upload audio and video files, we'll do transcription on them. We have native media players in the platform. If you have a spreadsheet, we'll have a native spreadsheet viewer. You do native redactions, right? Richer and richer expressions of these file types that are really important to you, because we built all this technology. Now, we're continuing to invest in our file types, and the next big thing that we're working on now is our native chat viewer. So you may already know we handle chat files already. You can ingest them in Everlaw, all kinds of chat files. And what we'll do is actually render them in the platform as documents, right, as the unit quantum of evidence is a document. And that's not super ideal for chats, because chats aren't really documents, right? A single message is in a document that's too small, and then the entire chat thread is too big. So this native chat viewer is going to allow you to view chats as chats in their native form, infinite scroll, and have very powerful tools around how you view these chats, right? How you filter them down, by who, by what, dates, attachments, et cetera, and then actually only produce the stuff you want to produce, which is a big challenge with chats today. And so this is something in active development now we'll be excited to release. Another thing we're working on is our connectors framework. So I mentioned there's so many cloud sources out there, and we already support connectors to the most common sources, Microsoft 365 and Google Vault and so on, but there's so many more. And so we're actively at work on a framework that, when we ship it, is going to allow us to add many more cloud sources, including, for instance, Zoom, which will be able to slurp up all of a Zoom meeting, the audio track, the video, and let you use our native viewers, of course, to view that data, as well as this nice cover sheet, Salesforce. And one of the nice things about us connecting directly to the APIs and owning the ingestion and the review is that we can do very rich things with this. So for instance, with our Salesforce connector, we're going to be able to preserve the relationships between Salesforce objects. Salesforce is just a big old database, and you have different entities that are connected, and Salesforce will preserve those relationships for you and let you see them in Everlaw, which is a very powerful way to review this kind of data. And that connection is not just unique to Salesforce. There's many types we'll be able to support these relational connections with in the platform. A third thing we're working on is preservation holds. So we have a legal holds tool. It allows you to issue holds notices. The next big step for us is to allow you to preserve in place with what's called a technical hold. We're going to connect to your information governance system. We're going to tell it to issue a technical hold, which means it'll prevent users from deleting the data that you want to preserve. And the first system we're going to work with is Microsoft 365. And then after that, we're going to roll out preservation in place for other systems that support an API-level connection. So this will, again, help you get the data where you need it so you can ingest it into the platform better. All right, so data in all its dimensions, that's the first challenge, right? The second challenge is the challenge of discovery, the fact that your haystacks are too big. You still need to find your needles. Now, I happen to think we already have the world's best discovery experience, cutting-edge search and supervised and unsupervised artificial intelligence and data visualization. And that, I think, gives you an incredible in-depth view of every document. One of our AMLAW customers was telling us about how they used Everlaw to discover that one of the documents that was produced to them was forged. Using Everlaw metadata in the view they had of the document, they brought it to court. Opposing counsel ended up dropping the matter. If only we all were so lucky. But the 360-degree view that Everlaw gives you is really, really helpful for getting the most out of your data. Now, I do want to talk about some of the other tools that are on the way here. So let me show you a live demo in 1 second of some stuff that's to come. All right. OK, so let's dig in here. Can we switch over to the laptop? OK, this is our communication visualizer. It is, and this is going to blow your mind, a way to visualize communications. What this actually means is that it's a graphical representation of the communication behavior of the people in the data you've collected, right? And so in this graphical representation, these circles represent email addresses. The bigger the circle, the greater volume of email, and the greater the size of the edge between any two nodes, the more email they exchange with each other, right? And so this allows you, just at a high level, to get an understanding of the communication patterns and behaviors of the people you're investigating, right? Or the data you're looking at, right? You can see here, there's some cliques of behavior, right? There's people over here that are all messaging each other. People over here, it's kind of like a high school cafeteria, who's hanging out with whom. You can see all that in here just visually, right? And by the way, it's pretty awesome to experience this on a touchscreen laptop. It's just so intuitive. And so you can do that kind of stuff, and you can also, you can filter down by date range. If I want to focus on 2001 here, I can do that, and you can see there's different patterns of behavior, right? Over time, and these evolve. Actually, I can go and just see how this changes over time as I explore date ranges, right? And I can see there's different clicks and so on. So it's a really, really valuable way to get a sense of just what's happening in my case. Now, another thing you can do is look for anomalous behavior, right? So instead of looking at emails here, I might look at domains, email domains, right? And so, by the way, I'm searching on this term Raptor, which is one of the key terms in the Enron case. And so these are all the emails that contain the word Raptor, right? So I can filter down to really any set of emails I want and then look at the communication patterns for those emails. So here, I moved over to domains, right? When I zoom in on domains here, you can see, well, big domain here is enron.com and enron.net. That's not surprising. But you will notice there's AOL.com over here. That should be interesting to you. For folks who listened to John, Carrie Rue, and Reed Catherine talk yesterday about Theranos, one of the things they noticed was one of the employees was sending stuff to the private Gmail address. Usually you do that when bad stuff is happening. You don't want to do that. It's a red flag for a lot of folks. You can see here that something is going on over here with someone sending email from Enron to AOL, right? And we can just see that visually. And if you add this filter here, it's going to rerun that search and just filter down to those AOL emails. And if I can jump over to the results table here, if I peek at this, you can see this Vince Kaminsky has forwarded an email from his Enron address to his AOL address. And the contents of the email are, how do we cope with the ethical issues this presents, right? So clearly you can read this and understand something is going on, right? Just by following the patterns of behavior in the communication graph. All right, so the next thing I want to show you, I'll admit, is not in development. It's already released, but it was so cool, I think I want to talk about it, okay? And this is our clustering tool, right? Clustering is a way to map out your haystack, right? It's what's called unsupervised learning, which means you don't have to do anything. You just upload your data, and Everlaw automatically analyzes the contents and creates this cluster map. So our clustering has a spatial representation. And by the way, I'll just say on the technical side, it's really awesome, cutting-edge academic research that we've built into the system to work in this way. It's kind of like Google Maps, spatially represented. So documents that are close together in this representation are similar to each other. Documents that are far away are not that similar to each other. Very intuitive. And I can just zoom in here, as you can see, and pan around and take a look at the various clusters we're looking at, right? Now, there's a lot of ways you can use a tool like clustering to better find the needles in your haystack. So one way is to just get a lay of the land, right? Look at all these items. You can see there's a cluster, lots of clusters in the middle that are related. You can also see over here, here's some fantasy football stuff, way off to the side, but all related to each other. This is probably not relevant to you, unless you're looking for fantasy football tips from 2001. I could probably give you those tips, by the way, we can talk. But for the purpose of this, you can probably, mark these as cold or deprioritize review, right, of these documents or entire sets of documents in this way. Now, another thing that's nice about clustering, because we built the technology, it's integrated into Everlaw. It's integrated into everything else in Everlaw too. Okay, so you can also overlay other components of Everlaw right onto our clustering interface. So, for instance, you can overlay our predictive coding responsiveness, right? So this is our predictive coding supervised learning tool that's predicting where the needles are. It's predicting what documents are hot or not, and you can overlay that into clustering. So you can see here whole clusters of really hot documents where you want to spend a lot of time, clusters of cold documents, even clusters of kind of controversial documents, some hot, some cold, where you might want to spend extra review, maybe do a second pass review, right? You can also use clustering for QC, even after review, right? So a common way to do QC is you can overlay privilege, right? So privilege designation here is really important. You don't want to produce documents that are privileged. You don't want to make mistakes and produce documents that should have been privileged as unprivileged, right? And so very quickly, you can get a lay of that land here and look for these kinds of mistakes, right? So here, we talked about Raptor. You can see here's the cluster on Raptor stuff, and you can see most of these documents are privileged, right? But a couple are marked as not privileged. You might want to look at those. And looking at the document, maybe it should be marked as privileged, right? And so in this way, you can use clustering before review to get a lay of the land, during review to prioritize your work, and then after review for QC. All of these ways are going to help you deal with staggering amounts of documents, right? Just millions or tens of millions of documents all in your browser in an incredibly intuitive interface. All right, so let me get back to the deck here. See if we can switch back, hopefully. All right. Yes, so the third thing we have that we're actively working on is our difference viewer, right? So difference viewer allows you to compare documents that are similar but not exactly the same. It highlights the differences, right? It's really useful for that reason. Now, what's neat about the difference viewer we're making is that it doesn't just allow you to compare two documents to each other. It allows you to compare many documents to each other. When you look at near duplicates, it turns out there's rarely just two near duplicates. There's often half a dozen or a dozen or more. And with our difference viewer, you'll be able to review all of them at the same time. And what it does is it's smart enough to pull out the areas, the text in the documents that's common to all, and then also highlight the areas that differ by sets of documents. And when you review those differences, it'll bundle the documents together. This set had this text, and this set had this text, and you can make batch designations on those documents, batch coding decisions based on the differences between the documents. And that allows you to really efficiently code many, many documents that are almost alike, which is otherwise kind of a maddening thing. And so we're really excited about this one when it comes out. All right, so we're going to do all that. We're going to give you a better discovery experience, and we're going to do all of that with the characteristic capabilities of Everlaw, right? Which means we're going to do it at scale, right? So cloud-native performance, cloud-native scale, supporting matters of tens of millions of documents and dozens of terabytes per matter. We're going to do it at speed, right? So I talked about producing or ingesting documents almost 1 million per hour, but also the immediate responsive experience throughout the site that you've come to expect from Everlaw. We're also going to do it with industry-best stability and industry-best uptime. Last year, in total, we had less than 5 hours of downtime, and that includes scheduled maintenances for the 13 product releases we did. So all of that is less than 5 hours over the course of the year. You can depend on Everlaw. And also availability wherever you might be, whether you're at home or at work, be able to log into Everlaw. And finally, with the best security in the business, security of your data and of your identity, right? Preserving what's incredibly important to you. And we're going to release these features with our monthly cadence. Every 4 weeks, you get new functionality baked right into Everlaw your team can put to use. All right, so we talked about the first two challenges. The third one is collaboration, right? Collaboration by role, by geography, and especially by entity, right? Working together across entities. The way we've addressed the collaboration challenge is by building collaboration into the fabric of Everlaw. We allow you to provision users and permissions, to share virtually anything in the platform, to message each other with a messaging center, segmented by matter, to coordinate your efforts, and to create work product using Storybuilder. And on the note of Storybuilder, we've seen incredible adoption of Storybuilder. We have, our clients have written over 50 million words in Storybuilder drafts and added over 2.7 million documents to Storybuilder timelines. And we're continuing, of course, to invest in Storybuilder. The next big improvement we're doing is to our depositions function. So we already have a tool that allows you to run live depositions, to upload transcripts. People have created over 10,000 depositions in Everlaw. The next big step is to allow you to upload video depositions, which can be synced to the transcripts. And you can jump to the right cuts in the video, extract those snippets, and add them as testimony to your timelines. It's a big improvement in integration and how the whole system is going to work together. The experience of Storybuilder, I think, is quite transformative. When we talk to clients, they talk, as this client is talking about, how they couldn't imagine what life was like before using Storybuilder and Everlaw. It really is about changing the way they work fundamentally for the better, both internally within their teams and externally, right? And this is a hard thing to appreciate if you haven't used it. It is not as glamorous as some of the other stuff I've talked about, but it is the thing that people most often cite as the thing they never would want to go back from, right? So if you haven't already used Storybuilder, give it a shot. It's included with Everlaw. All right, so this is what we're building, right? These three pillars all coming together, right, into a unified and secure experience, right? Handling your data from the first byte coming out of your IG system all the way to exhibits at trial, right? Handling the ecosystem of roles, right? Allowing you to access your data when you need it with no loss of information. Allowing your teams to work securely and precisely. And we're going to do all of this and while delivering for you, I think the two things you really need out of any litigation or investigation platform. You need enterprise-grade functionality and security because you need to get your tasks done at the end of the day. There's no real alternative, right? And consumer-grade experiences, so you don't hate yourself when that day is over, right? You put those two things together, that's what we're going to deliver for you, and that's going to allow you to deliver the outcomes that matter, right? And allow you to illuminate truth in pursuit of justice. That, together, is our vision. Now, it's a good question of how are we doing it, right? Why Everlaw? What's so special about us? I will make the observation that when I talked about all these challenges, they're all technical, right? Big data and artificial intelligence and ingestion and, and real-time collaboration and, of course, building all this together in a unified platform. These are gnarly, deep technical problems. They may not sound particularly exciting to you, but I'll say for a nerd, they're a dream. And obviously, I'm a huge nerd, right? This is very exciting for me. But it's not just me, right? You know my background, and you might have guessed that this is in the DNA of our company, right? We are not a legal company trying to figure out how to write code for you. We are a technology company that happens to focus on the law, and that allows us to do things other people can't do. We have a world-class technical bench. We can design and engineer solutions that others simply can't, right? Also, this means that the entire platform is built by us, right? Rather than cobbled together from acquisitions. That deep integration is unparalleled. And that also means that all of Everlaw is lovingly designed and built right here in the Bay Area. Now, there's one other thing I want to talk about, right? Specifically about the industry. The details matter. I've said this many times, I'll say it again. You sweat the details, you have to sweat the details. I'm proud to say we sweat the details too, right? Sometimes this gets a little ridiculous.
We do sweat the details. There has been hotly debated topics. We've had discussions about how we should spell load file, whether it should be just one word or two separate words. And it's been a debate for several years. And, oh, this is spicy. I think it should be one word. It should be one word.
This is true. I've been in those discussions. I also think it should be spelled one word for the record. But look, what I'm actually getting at here is we make many features that are not going to show up in a marketing one-sheeter or a slick sales demo, but are going to make your lives easier, right? As much as we love those big picture pillars of transformation, we love this stuff too. And so I actually want to spend a little time talking about features that are already on Everlaw that show that attention to detail that really matters, we think, right? So even if you already use Everlaw, I'm curious if you know about the following things. Okay, did you know we have a party search that allows you to search for nothing else? What the heck does this mean? A party search allows you to search for communications to, from, whatever the parties are in the search. First of all, you can do this, and you can search by people's names that are automatically add all their email aliases that we can find for those names. But you can also say, I don't want to have anyone else in the communication. So you can say, find me emails between Mary and Bob and John and nobody else. If they had any secret communications, I want to find those communications. And that's incredibly powerful. If someone's trying to conspire, that's how they're going to work, right? And one of our corporate clients told us that building these kinds of searches in the platform they used to use would take them 30 minutes or more and a lot of cursing. And in Everlaw, you can do that with just a couple clicks. Do you know about undoing tasks? Okay, we talked to an AmLaw firm recently that accidentally bulk coded 20,000 documents the wrong way. And with their current solution, they have to spend hours with their audit trail undoing the work. If only they had an undo button, like Everlaw does. So in Everlaw, if you do a batch action, you can undo it. And the system will go back and undo all the batch actions that were done. And it's also smart enough that if in the intervening time someone else went into one of those documents and made a change, we'll keep that change, right? So we're going to make sure nothing gets lost and everything gets fixed. Malware detection, okay? Lots of viruses out there. When you upload data in Everlaw, we'll automatically run antivirus on it, and we'll tell you if we detect malware. Now, we're not going to delete those documents because they can still have valuable discoverable data, right? So you can have a Word document that has a virus in it, but still has information in the body of the document that you want to see. So we'll allow you to review those documents in the safety of Everlaw, and then if you actually try to download those natives, we'll remind you at that time, but hey, these things might have viruses in them. Everlaw API. So one of the hallmarks of Everlaw is, we talk about how easy it is to get data into the system. It's also really easy to get data out of the system. That's by design. You can export in all kinds of different ways yourself, and no fees attached. You can get, zip file exports, load file exports, what have you. It's your data, right? You should use it. We also think when you sign up for Everlaw, it's your platform, right? And you can use it in all kinds of different ways. The Everlaw API is a way to use Everlaw programmatically. So if you have a team that has some technical capability, you can write code that interacts with Everlaw directly in the code and automate tasks you might want to do. You can examine users and projects. You can actually schedule and send data for upload. You can even run searches in the platform, all through the Everlaw API. Search explanation. So Everlaw has an incredibly powerful search functionality. One of the most powerful features is the grouping and filtering functionality. So grouping and filtering, what they are is when you run a search, grouping allows you to take the set of documents that match your search and bring in contextually related documents into the search results. And filtering allows you to then take out some other documents from the search results. So you can say, find me all the documents with the word price in them, including emails and attachments, what have you. Bring in the entire email threads of those documents and then remove the attachments. I just want the emails, right? You can do that kind of thing with grouping and filtering. Everlaw lets you group and filter, by the way, even in nested ways. You can nest these grouping and filterings, and you can make incredibly sophisticated searches with it. Now, I just said something that's kind of complicated, and when you run these searches, you want to know that what you're doing is right. And so we actually have a really neat tool that'll explain to you the impact of any grouping and filtering that you choose. You pick it, it's going to tell you how many documents are added and how many are removed by these actions. It's also going to walk you through a custom step-by-step explanation of just the particular grouping and filtering actions you selected to explain to you what's going on so you have confidence in knowing that the results are right. So here, if I want to create a grouping and filtering action, and I go into this dialog, I can say, give me all the attachments and pull out all the parents here. It's going to go and compute and say, look, beforehand there are this many documents, now there's this many. And by the way, let me walk you through what Everlaw is going to do for you. It's going to add in these things, it's going to remove these things. You now can have an understanding and confidence in what you're building is exactly right, even for the most complicated searches. Clawbacks. Oh gosh, clawbacks are really, really painful. Clawback happens when you produce some documents to opposing counsel, and you then realize that some of them should have been privileged and you didn't want them to have them. Then you got to issue a clawback and say, hey, by the way, you got to get rid of these documents, right? That's what a clawback is. Typically, it's a mad dash. You have people manually constructing these overlay load files and so on just to get the data out of their systems. Everlaw does two really nice things for you when it comes to clawbacks. First of all, it can figure out when you need to do a clawback. If you ever mark a document as privileged that's already been produced, Everlaw knows that, and it can tell you, hey, you have 2 documents in this production that have since been marked as privileged. You probably need to do a clawback. The second thing it'll do is automatically create that clawback production for you. It'll package up exactly the perfect diff that says, get rid of these documents, and you can ship it over to opposing counsel digitally, even if you want to. It's a huge time saver. Metadata redaction suggestions. This is a good one, too. So when you redact, typically you're drawing boxes on images. That's usually how redaction works. And your focus is on making sure the data isn't visible on the page, right? It's very sensible. The challenge is that that data can also be present in the metadata of these documents. And if you produce those documents and you haven't redacted the metadata, even if you drew the boxes in the right spot on the page, they're going to get the metadata and they can see that data that you didn't want them to see, right? So in Everlaw, you, of course, can redact metadata directly if you think about it, but it's easy to forget. So one of the nice things we do is when you redact on the image of a document, we actually peek behind the box and look at what text you're redacting, compare it to the metadata of the document, and then suggest redactions for you in the metadata, like so. So here we're going to draw a box over this header information of an email, and it's going to automatically say, you know what, a lot of this data is reflected in these metadata fields. Click here to redact all of them, and redact them as well. Another one on metadata and emails is a good one, is automatically extracting metadata from email PDFs. What the heck is that? Okay, what that is ideally when you get emails, they're in a beautiful, they're in PST or EML formats ready to go. Sometimes you get emails that are just PDFs, and they have no metadata. They just look like PDFs, and it's infuriating because you don't have they're not treated like emails. They don't look like emails. Well, when you upload those to Everlaw, Everlaw actually looks at the text of those PDFs, figures out their emails, extracts the metadata, and then treats them like emails. You can see the metadata on the side. You can thread those emails. One more thing on emails. It's really painful to review long email threads, right? There's so much duplicative data and quotes and so on. You kind of lose track. There's a lot of threads. What are you doing? It would be great to only have to look at all the content of the emails in the entire thread just once. So with our inclusive emails button, you can look at a huge thread like this and click this Show Inclusive Emails, and it'll show you just the set of emails you have to look at to see all the novel content in the entire thread. Much faster, more efficient. Okay, couple more here. Bates linking in StoryBuilder. One of the characteristic behaviors of StoryBuilder is that you can inject evidence directly into your line of reasoning, into what you're writing, right? Typically how you do that is you add documents to StoryBuilder, you drag them in from the sidebar to supplement whatever argument you're trying to make. It's a simple system. But sometimes you know exactly what you want to cite. So did you know that when you're writing in StoryBuilder, you can just type in a Bates number, And Everlaw will automatically go turn that into the document it's referencing right there. And now you can go click on that document. You can see all the notes. You can see the metadata, the images, all the annotations of the document, put it to use immediately. Last one here, coding presets. So Everlaw's review window is incredibly customizable. You can customize the tabs and how wide it is and what codes you want to see. You can also get to a next level of customization with coding presets, which allow you to set predefined behaviors on coding. Adding or removing any combination of codes or binders or what have you. You have a bunch of these things. Once you set them up, you can be incredibly fast and consistent in your coding. So here, it's really easy to go create a code. I'm going to add a couple codes here. I can easily remove them or whatnot. I give it a name. And then once I've given it a name, I can just apply it with the click of a mouse button or a keyboard, a key, and I can move very, very quickly, knowing with confidence I'm doing the same thing every single time. Okay, so first, I hope you enjoyed this little tour. I'll ask a couple questions. How many of you have already used at least one of these features or heard of one of these features? Good number, that's great. How many learned something new, something they didn't know about? Okay, that's also great. Why, you might ask, why did I spend like 10 minutes out of 45 minutes talking about these esoteric features? And it's on purpose, because this stuff really matters. Okay? It matters as much as the big picture stuff. Okay? When I think about if the process of e-discovery is a painting, it's not an impressionistic painting with broad brushstrokes. It has broad brushstrokes, but it has a ton of tiny details as well. You got to handle those details. You got to do both things. And by the way, it's not even painted by one person, it's painted by a lot of people, right? And so that is a challenge that we're facing that we're excited about tackling. And by the way, depending on your role, when you saw those 11 features, some of them might have made sense to you, and some of them might have been like, why do I care about this? This is useless to me, or I don't even know what this is about. That's to be expected. Because there's so many folks that have to interact together in the system, there's so much specialization, not everything's going to make sense to you or be relevant to you. But I can tell you every one of those features means a lot to somebody, right, in the entire ecosystem. And we take a huge amount of pride in tackling all of those details for all of you and supporting the entire ecosystem. All right, so speaking of support, I do want to talk about the experience of working with us briefly. So I want to give a shout out to our customer experience team, which is really second to none in terms of how knowledgeable and passionate and just dang nice they are. It's always free to call them up, to email them, to get them to upload data for you, to get a training, to develop a migration plan or onboard users, to look at a production protocol for you, or just to consult on how to use Everlaw better. And when you have more robust services needs, when you need project management or managed review, we have an amazing partner ecosystem, including many of the folks that have sponsored this conference. All right, putting all this together, what do we have, right? What is Everlaw doing? Well, we're addressing the key challenges of data and discovery and collaboration. We're doing this in a technically sophisticated and unified system, delivering for you both enterprise-grade functionality and security, so you can get the tasks done that you need to do, and consumer-grade experience, so you can actually enjoy the process of doing it. We're going to tackle the big picture functionality, those big pillars of the product design and the details as well. We're going to support you with amazing people, both within Everlaw and with our partners. All of that together, right? Now, many of you are existing users. You know our team. You share our vision. I just want to thank you, right, for allowing us to come this far. And I hope the rest of you join us, of course. When I look back, I think the past decade allowed us to make a number of really big steps towards this vision and also build out the team that can continue to achieve against it. The next decade is going to be us delivering it for you. All right, well, thank you for being part of the Everlaw community. Let's continue to learn from each other, share ideas for the future, and of course, enjoy the conference.